forensic investigator Paul O'Sullivan now due to return to Parliament's ad hoc committee on Thursday. That follows his dramatic exit last week, which resulted in MPs saying he had to be dealt with. His departure raised fresh questions about the effectiveness and authority of the committee itself as it continues probing allegations of criminal infiltration and political interference in the criminal justice system. The committee's now sought a legal opinion on its next course of action. It's also confirmed that if O'Sullivan does not respond to its request, a summons will be issued.
We can confirm that on Friday, the 27th of February 2026, we addressed correspondence to Mr. O'Sullivan inviting him to appear before this committee on Thursday, 5 March 2026, as he was still under examination when he decided to abandon committee proceedings without the permission of the chairperson. Chairperson, may I also add that Mr. O'Sullivan has been put to terms in that we have informed him to indicate to you his willingness to appear before the committee by no later than today at 12 midday. We can also confirm that in the event that Mr. O'Sullivan does not comply with the committee's invitation for him to appear before it, a summons has already been prepared in order to secure his attendance or his appearance.
Zoleka Qodashe joins us now from Parliament. She's the person covering this for you. Zoleka, good afternoon to you. So the deadline, we understand, expiring an hour ago. Do we know yet if Paul O'Sullivan has replied to Parliament?
Well, Stephen, good afternoon, and good afternoon to the viewers. We expect that further correspondence between the ad hoc committee as well as Paul O'Sullivan, the fraud examiner, will be shared with us as soon as it is made available. But of course, he is not the only one who the committee is communicating with. They're also communicating with the lawyers for Sarah Jane Trent, who has issued a letter to the ad hoc committee also saying that essentially the messages that were read out before the inquisitorial body, which relate to a romantic relationship between herself as well as former executive director at IPID, that is Robert McBride, do not be ventilated when she appears before the inquisitorial body. We expect that she is expected to appear before the ad hoc committee after Paul O'Sullivan. And when Paul O'Sullivan, or should he appear before the inquisitorial body again, we expect that, and it has been suggested that members of Parliament continue fielding questions or probing Paul O'Sullivan, more importantly on his conduct, given the fact that when he abruptly left proceedings last Thursday, he was in fact facing questions from the evidence leader, that is Advocate Bongiwe Mkhize. So today essentially was looking at what legal recourse is available to Parliament's ad hoc committee given the conduct of Mr. Paul O'Sullivan, but also it poses two questions. One is whether Paul O'Sullivan committed an offence, and two, what legal remedies are available to the ad hoc committee in relation to the offence, and also to compel Paul O'Sullivan to appear before it and complete his testimony, which we know he did not complete when he left on Thursday. Now, this points us to various provisions of the Powers, Privileges and Immunities Act, and that essentially stipulates various contraventions, or rather whether Paul O'Sullivan is in contempt of Parliament. And what has been told before the inquisitorial body is that it could be argued that Paul O'Sullivan has been in contravention of Section 7 of PIPLA, that is the Powers, Privileges and Immunities Act, that essentially forbids any or prohibits anyone from impeding with the work of Parliament or any committee. And so it is argued that by leaving proceedings early, he may have impeded the work of Parliament in that it was unable to continue with its constitutional obligations. And that then leads us to Section 27 of PIPLA that imposes a fine or a prison sentence not exceeding 3 years. So that is what the ad hoc committee may be able to invoke because of Paul O'Sullivan's sudden, abrupt, rather, departure from proceedings on Thursday. Let's just take a listen to what Parliament's legal services had to say.
We proceed to Section 7A of the PIPLA. 7A of the PIPLA is of particular relevance. It provides that a person may not improperly interfere with or impede the exercise or performance by Parliament, a House or committee of its authority or functions. And then if we look at Section 27, it stipulates that the contravention of Section 7 constitutes an offence, attracting liability to a fine or imprisonment. So, honourable members, on a plain and grammatical interpretation of the term impede, it denotes conduct that is obstruct or hinders the progression of Parliament's work. In leaving the proceedings prematurely, Mr. O'Sullivan's actions may reasonably be construed as interfering with or impeding the committee in the execution of its mandate. Honourable members, the committee's terms of reference require it to assess the veracity of allegations advanced by various witnesses, including that of Mr. O'Sullivan, whose evidence was material, particularly in relation to allegations of political interference in police operations.
Now, Stephen, this is not the only statutory provision that may be invoked by the ad hoc committee. They can also invoke Section 17 of PIPLA that essentially also bars any person from essentially not answering the questions that are put to them satisfactorily. And it can be argued that because he left proceedings prematurely, that particular provision may be invoked. Of course, we await to hear whether Paul O'Sullivan has reached out to the ad hoc committee as to whether he will appear before the inquisitorial body on Thursday. But what's also important to note, Stephen, is that just because he may agree to sit through proceedings on Thursday does not negate the fact that an offence has been or could potentially have been committed. And that is what Parliament will now be looking at.
Thank you very much indeed, Zoleka Qodashe, watching that story very closely for you. Meanwhile,